And this is a Fox News alert. Terror rocked the United States this weekend, and welcome to Hannity. 28-year-old Ahmad Khan Rahami, a naturalized U.S. citizen born in Afghanistan, captured by police earlier today. Now, he's suspected of setting off bombs this weekend in New York and New Jersey. Now, for the very latest, we go to Fox News' Rick Leventhal. He's got standing by with what's happening. Rick, what's going on?
Sean, remarkably fast work by law enforcement who caught Rahami after a shootout in Linden, New Jersey, just 3 hours after the FBI released his photo, and roughly 48 hours after that first explosive device, a pipe bomb, went off in Seaside Park, New Jersey. The blast here in Chelsea Saturday night injured 29 people, many hit by shrapnel, including BBs and ball bearings from the pressure cooker bomb that was very similar to the one used by the Boston Marathon bombers. A second pressure cooker bomb 4 blocks to the north of us did not detonate. And pipe bombs at a train station also failed to explode, even after a couple of homeless guys grabbed the backpack the bombs were in and carried it 1,000 yards. A police robot later detonated one of those devices. And late today, after that shootout that left several officers hurt, Rahami with a couple of bullet wounds, he was charged in Union County, New Jersey, with 5 counts of attempted murder of a law enforcement officer and weapons charges. He's being held on $5.2 million bail, and his first court appearance tentatively set for next Wednesday, September 28th. But Sean, Rahami will also likely be hit with numerous state and federal charges in connection with the attack, so he likely won't be bonding out of jail anytime soon.
All right, Rick Leventhal, thank you. Also tonight, authorities say Rahami was not on law enforcement's radar before the bombings. Joining us with more, Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge. Now, Catherine, he did apparently sued police along with his family for profiling of Muslims, correct?
Well, that's right. We're going to get to that in just 1 second, Sean. Late today, there was new information about prior contact between the FBI and the suspect, Rahami, after a domestic dispute. The victim there alleged that Rahami also showed signs of possible radicalization at that time. 2 sources confirmed the FBI followed up on the lead, but there was not enough to pursue it at that time, and the original allegations were withdrawn. Here's how the FBI described the episode at today's news conference.
There's nothing to indicate that currently he was on our radar. We had a report of a domestic incident some time ago. That was the allegations were recanted, and I don't have any other information. We'll keep digging.
Tonight, the FBI is very focused on Rahami's overseas travel and at least 3 trips to his native Afghanistan. A law enforcement source says the frequency of the trips was not suspicious at the time because of his family ties, and the number of trips did not suggest Rahami had outside help to pay for the flights. A second law enforcement source backed up that account, adding the FBI is now investigating who Rahami met with overseas and whether they planted the seeds of radicalization. Rahami immigrated to the U.S. legally with his family when he was 7 years old, and he is also a naturalized U.S. citizen. While police say they are not looking for other suspects or a broader cell, they are running down leads from the New York City surveillance video where the pressure cooker bomb exploded, injuring 29.
We identified, well, we have a video of 2 persons who picked up the bag, took the device out of it, and then walked off with the bag. Now, we went back to see where they came from. They looked like they were 2 gentlemen just strolling up and down 7th Avenue at the time. We have no information that would link them to this at all. However, we still want to talk to them.
Based on the news conferences today, there was really a long stretch from 2002 until 2012 where there was a dispute over the family's restaurant, and according to court papers, they sued at one point alleging that they were being marginalized and targeted because of their faith, Sean.
All right, Catherine Herridge, thank you. Americans are on edge tonight, and a Drudge Report headline from earlier today, it sums it up at best. It says, ISIS among us. The bombings in New York and New Jersey weren't the only terror-related attacks this weekend. On Saturday, a 22-year-old Somali man stabbed 10 people at a mall in Minnesota. Is being reported that he mentioned Allahu Akbar during the attack and allegedly asked one of the victims if he was a Muslim. ISIS, in fact, has claimed responsibility for that bloody rampage, and that's not all. Late last week in New York City, a homeless Palestinian man with a Jordanian passport, well, he went after police officers with a meat cleaver after they caught him trying to remove a boot from his car. A boot is one of those things that prevents a car from leaving a parking spot. If you don't live in New York, you might not understand that. But anyway, according to the New York Post, the U.S. was trying to deport him, and he was shouting Allahu Akbar once again before lunging at police. One of the brave officers was released from the hospital on Friday. Look at this video. Struck in the face by a meat cleaver. He needed 70 stitches in his face. 70. Anyway, that's among the news for today. And joining us now, we have former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is with us, apparently. Okay, Mr. Mayor, how are you?
Yes. How are you, Sean?
Let me start with, this guy recently went to Afghanistan. One of his friends was interviewed earlier with Shep Smith on Fox today, and I paid very close attention. He's saying that he changed when he went there. If somebody's going to visit Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, why is that a red flag in my mind? Is that fair?
Sean, that's very fair, and I disagree with the FBI analysis of this, and I disagreed with it also with regard to the Boston Marathon bomber, Tsarnaev. I thought it was a major red flag when he not only went to Russia, but he went to Chechnya. And here's what I object to, and what I'd like to know the answer to. Did they give that information to the local police? Because if they didn't, then the FBI needs to be straightened out also, and somebody has to have the courage to say that. When the FBI has information like this, the reason they're not following up on it is because there are only 14,000 FBI agents. There are 36,000 New York City police officers. There are over 800,000 sworn law enforcement officers in the United States. The FBI has to begin to give this information to the local police because maybe they'll have the extra cop or two that can watch a guy like this. Now, I put the responsibility for ISIS completely on Obama and Hillary Clinton. This would not have happened had they not withdrawn the troops from Iraq. They were handed a somewhat stable Iraq that miraculously the surge under Petraeus worked. We had stabilized Iraq. We had used the Sunnis to fight for us to win the eastern part of Iraq. And then when Obama imposed his deadline, I have no idea what kind of irrational mind would think you should have a timetable for a war. But when we pulled out, a lot of those Sunnis went into the hills, and the other Sunnis joined ISIS. That joined up with the Syrian rebels, and then all of a sudden,
and it's even
the
worse.
JV team.
It's worse because they have the oil as an ability to finance and advance their caliphate and pay for it.
And we left them with a fountain of gold, right? We left them with a fountain of gold, and they are now in 28. They are now in 28 countries. In the last year, we've had more attacks in America than at any time since September 11. From September 11 until Obama, we had no attacks on America. They've all started under Obama. They are provoked by his weakness, by her weakness, by her having the government of Libya overthrown, where ISIS also has a major stronghold. We lost 4 Americans there. She seems to have forgotten that. And
let me ask you this.
We're living in a much more complex and dangerous world than we were living in before Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton came into office.
Hillary voted for that war, and then she pulled out of the war. As you said, they gave a drop-dead date. That created the vacuum for ISIS. Now, this is important. And then she callously said recently, I made a mistake. We've got to learn from the mistake. Now, if I'm the parent of one of the nearly 5,000 people that died there, or if I'm one of the brave men and women that fought, bled, lost a limb, a leg, an arm, or was disfigured, and oops, I made a mistake, and we got to learn from it, that's a pretty severe mistake.
Sean, and I don't know. I don't know what Hillary is good at. I can tell you what she's not good at: foreign policy.
Well,
she voted for the war.
Yeah,
she
voted
for the war. Then she was against the war. She was against the surge. She embarrassed Petraeus, you might remember, when he appeared before Congress to describe how the surge was working. And the reality is, everything in the world that was handed over to her when she became Secretary of State was much worse when she left office. Not to mention all the emails that she exposed and all the money she took for the foundation, for the Clinton Foundation. I mean, the reality is that this woman's knowledge of foreign affairs is like...
But this is as big a choice election as I think we'll ever see in our lifetime on every big issue, from Obamacare to the economy to Supreme Court justices. But there are 3 issues that impact this issue profoundly. One candidate can say the words radical Islam. I mean, the torture...
Thank God.
the tortured pretzel, they're turning themselves into a pretzel as they ride a razor's edge of political correctness. They can't say it. And here's the other two. Building a wall will protect the country, and extreme vetting. Here's my question on vetting. Hillary wants a 550% increase in refugees. Every top law enforcement official, intelligence official, Comey, Clapper, Steinbeck, McCall, General Allen, have all warned that, and Brennan, all warned that ISIS will infiltrate the refugee population. She wants a 550% increase. Here's my question. If somebody, I know the Saudis, for example, gave her, a foundation up to $25 million, $10 million for the library. So if you grow up in a country where, as a man, you get to tell women they can't drive, you get to tell women what to wear, you get to say whether they go to work or school or can leave the country, you grow up in a country where they kill gays and lesbians, where they persecute Christians and Jews. She takes their money, they buy her silence. If you grow up under that cultural divide, the direct antithesis to our constitutional republic, why can't we ask if you want to abide by our laws and our culture before you come here? Why is that described as bigoted?
Not only should we ask that, that's the oath that you take when you become a citizen of the United States. You renounce allegiance to all other sovereigns. You pledge allegiance to the United States, and you pledge you'll give up your life in defense of the United States. So when we say that we want people, as Donald Trump says, that come to the United States who love this country, that's built right into our Constitution. Hillary Clinton doesn't understand our Constitution. She doesn't respect our Constitution. Her knowledge of foreign policy is a joke. Her performance in foreign policy was a disaster. Yeah. Every single thing in the world.
Well, let me ask the last question. Because Donald Trump said today, now, by the way, CNN, I just read Joe Concha's column in The Hill. He never said racial profiling. He said profile. Now, should we profile people that have a huge cultural divide and grow up in a society that says we're going to kill gays and lesbians and we're going to tell women how to dress and we're going to persecute Christians and Jews?
Sean,
I want to profile them.
Sean, I investigated lots of crimes, right?
Right.
I used FBI profilers to help me figure out who the killer was, who the person was. If I have a few little pieces of information, the guy's 6'5" and he's white, I don't go look for a 5'4" black.
Yeah.
Profiling is absolutely appropriate and necessary to solve crimes, so long as it's based on fact and not prejudice.
After 9/11, the city of New York, the NYPD had a mosque surveillance program, and Comrade Bozo de Blasio is what I call him. He eliminated that program. Was that a mistake?
Big mistake. Now, he looked pathetic this weekend.
Oh, my, it was so embarrassing. It was humiliating.
As the former mayor of New York,
embarrassing.
I was embarrassed watching him on television. He couldn't even say that a bombing was an act of terror.
It was so bad.
Governor Cuomo had to come in almost as if he was his mentor and say, hey, by the way, if there's a bomb and it hurts 29 of your citizens, it's an act of terror, then we'll figure out if it's Islamic or not.
It was an intentional act. We did get that information. Intentional act,
but not an act of terror. A bombing in and of itself is an act of terror. It can be Islamic terror. The odds are that it is Islamic terror. I'm going to tell you, Sean, the moment I heard about it, the moment I heard what kind of bomb it was, I knew exactly where it came from.
Anybody with common sense
We're fighting a two-front war. We're fighting a war over in the Middle East, and we're fighting a war in the streets of America.
Well,
and Obama, Clinton, and this guy they have on the ticket, Tim Kaine, who says that we're winning.
Yeah,
if this is winning,
the JV team.
I'd hate to be losing. Yeah, we're winning, and how many attacks have we had since San Bernardino? And this guy on her ticket thinks we're winning. He must be living in Mars.
All right, Mr. Mayor, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And by the way, all of you out there, in 50 days, Think of the three big issues just on this issue where there are profound differences. Do you want a president that can say the words radical Islam? Do you think it's important for national security to build the wall along our border? And do you think vetting people that come from countries like Saudi Arabia, where they treat women like third-class citizens, they kill gays and lesbians, and, of course, persecute Christians and Jews? Do you think somebody coming from that culture that we should be vetting? Up next tonight, right here on Hannity.
We are not going to jump to conclusions. We're not going to offer you easy answers.
So we know what we know at this point, and I'd be dubious about speculating on what we don't know.
All right, so after the bombings this weekend in New York and New Jersey, Democrats went out of their way to thread the needle. They never wanted to say that this was a radical Islamic terrorist attack. Why this mysterious reluctance resistance? We'll check in with Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North and Dr. Ben Carson. That and much more on this busy news night tonight on Hannity. And welcome back to Hannity. So the Democrats continue to prove they just don't get it. So in the aftermath of the New York and New Jersey bombings, you know what your liberal leaders were telling you? Well, they all said, don't rush to judgment. It's probably not terrorism. No, it's an isolated incident. They're not connected, even though they all happen to have flip phone cell triggers just by coincidence. Watch this.
I think it's always wiser to wait until you have information before making conclusions.
We're going to be very careful and patient to get to the full truth here. We are not going to jump to conclusions. We're not going to offer you easy answers. We're going to make sure we have all the facts.
You can guess, you can hypothesize, or you can just wait for the facts and go from there. So we know what we know at this point, and I'd be dubious about speculating on what we don't know.
I would ask that the press try to refrain from getting out ahead of the investigation. It does not help if false reports or incomplete information is out there.
All right, here with reaction now is the host of War Stories, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. Colonel, you know, once again, the mysterious reluctance, resistance, man-caused disasters, overseas contingencies, workplace violence, and now we're threading a new needle here. This was an intentional act. It was intentional. A bomb being set. Geez, talk about stating the obvious.
And then we have Josh Earnest saying it's a narrative war. I would commend to him to pay a little attention to all the bodies that come back draped with American flags. Look, I've got the answer for them. And I don't want to take a second from Ben Carson because I know he's up next. Here's the slogan for the next commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Stop the jihad. It doesn't matter the trade name, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, Abu Sayyaf. All of them are just different trade names for these franchises from hell. All of them pushing the same product, death to infidels like us. Here's how to stop the jihad being waged against us. Number one, it's not enough to condemn in the strongest terms or beg for more time or investigations. We stand shoulder to shoulder. That's baloney, and the jihadis know it. Number two, stop guessing about whether the perps are directed, inspired, radicalized, or lone wolves. They're all jihadis. Pledge to stop the jihad. Number three, Commander-in-Chief has to lead Western leaders to no jihadi safe havens where self-proclaimed leaders like al-Baghdadi and Zawahiri can create their own propaganda. Number four, they have to be killed. And when they're killed, don't hold a press conference to show pictures of POTUS and his pals wringing their hands in the sit room. Number five, forge a Sunni, Kurd, Egyptian, Jordanian, UAE, Saudi force to end the Syrian civil war and keep the peace. Number six, the next commander-in-chief has to cancel the Iran nuke deal and break the perception that the United States is joined at the hip with the Ayatollahs in Tehran. It will deny a hot-button issue to all jihadis. Number seven, keep Gitmo open, try enemy combatants in military tribunals, stop the unvetted refugees from entering the United States, and start a public diplomacy program like we did against the Soviet Union with Solidarity, Radio Liberty, Radio Freedom. And finally, just like the mayor just said a moment ago, America's mayor was right. Reactivate the surveillance programs like New York Police Department Commissioner Kelly created back when he was mayor and that de Blasio abandoned. There's the 8 ways. And by the way,
the only way those things, and I agree wholeheartedly with all 8 on your list, that's going to happen is if Donald Trump is elected, because Hillary won't do it. Let me give you another example. She not only screwed up, you know, voting for the Iraq war, then giving a date of return, and then saying, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. Sorry about your sons and daughters dying. I'm sorry about you being disfigured and losing your legs and your arms. We have to learn from that. But she's made a lot of mistakes. Then we've got Iraq, Afghanistan, and we've got Syria. Then you've got, of course, the Russian reset. She hasn't done anything with North Korea. Add to that, though, Donald Trump met tonight with President al-Sisi of Egypt. Yep. And Hillary, though, and Obama, they supported the former Muslim Brotherhood head by the guy by the name of Morsi, and gave him F-16s, tanks, and 1.5 billion taxpayer dollars, a guy that once referred to the Israelis and Jews as descendants of apes and pigs. Is there any place, foreign policy-wise, that you can point to where she has a success story to tell?
Yeah, yes, she traveled to more places than any previous.
That's not a success story.
That's part of her legacy. Look at Sean. We cannot undo the damage that these people have done in the last 8 years. What we can do is rectify it. And the ways you rectify that is having a foreign policy that's America first. I'm not trying to quote a campaign, and that supports the ideals of the American people. We don't have that today. One of the big reasons why the disconnect that's occurred is because the folks who've been running our government for the last 8 years are in nirvana. Look at the way they talk. They don't want to make a conclusion about a bomb going off, for crying out loud. I mean, everything that they have done has been done wrong. We can't undo what they did, but we can fix it.
Well, I agree, Colonel. You had it right, I had it right, and they had it wrong. And the Iranian deal is at the heart of the worst decision they've made. Libya is second, Iraq and Syria a close first, second, and third, and Egypt another mistake. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Bless
Safe
you,
home.
brother. Appreciate you.
All right, joining me now, former 2016 presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, what is your reaction to this mysterious reluctance and resistance to say the words radical Islam? Why is that so hard?
I believe it's the loss of common sense. People are so caught up in their political correctness that they lose control of rational thinking. And unfortunately, this is exactly what the radical Islamists want. The Memorandum of Understanding that was uncovered during the Holy Land Foundation trial, they found this memorandum, and it talked about civilization jihad, how they would be able to take over here, and they would use our political correctness against us. And it really is quite silly, and it seems like all we have to do is look at Europe, look at France, look at Germany. Can we learn from their mistakes, or do we have to make the same mistakes over again? It really is just maddening how we've completely lost our senses. And this whole thing about profiling, forget about the label. People are so concerned about the label. If you know there's a mass murderer who's 7 feet tall and has green eyes, and you're in a room full of people, which ones are you going to look for? You're going to look for the tall ones with green eyes. Doesn't mean that every tall one with green eyes is the one, but certainly that's the group that you need to be concentrating on. That's common sense.
Dr. Carson, we're 50 days away from Election Day. Tonight. 50 days. So I view this as one of the biggest choice elections. Number one, Supreme Court. It'll impact this country for generations. Extreme vetting or no vetting. A wall, as Trump wants, or a bridge in what Hillary wants. Saying radical Islam, not being able to say it. Obamacare, eliminate it, repeal it, replace it, or keep it. On so many big issues, education, energy independence.
Absolutely.
These are deep and profound differences between these two candidates. What do you say to those Republicans that have been sabotaging and undermining Donald Trump, and I would argue helping Hillary Clinton in the process?
I would say to them, this is not going to be a 4 or an 8-year issue. You think that we can just blow through this and Hillary will be okay because she's a known quantity. Wrong. The problem here is that when you get the federal court system and the Supreme Court in the hands of those radicals, it will be there for a generation or two, and the United States will never be the same again.
I don't know
if we recover. That's what they need to understand.
Economic policy, raising
recover.
taxes, cutting taxes, energy independence, education back to the states, or top-down Common Core from Washington, supported by the NAA.
Absolutely.
It's deep and profound.
And it's not... It's not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an American issue. People have got to get beyond that because we're talking about our children.
Are we going to see you in Ohio, in Cleveland on Wednesday for our town hall with Mr. Trump?
I will be there.
All right, we'll see you there. Dr. Carson, thank you.
Okay.
And coming up next tonight, we'll give you details on that town hall in a few minutes, but up next on Hannity.
We want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally through a process, and we need extreme screening.
After a wave of terror attacks right here on U.S. soil, Donald Trump is calling for extreme vetting of refugees and immigrants. We'll check in with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's next. That and more tonight, straight ahead on Hannity.
These attacks and many others were made possible because of our extremely open immigration system, which fails to properly vet and screen the individuals or families coming into our country. We should temporarily suspend immigration entirely from regions where safe and adequate screening cannot occur. The pro-immigrant position is the position that favors tough screening and tight controls. And we want people to come into our country, but they have to come in legally through a process, and we need extreme screening.
Donald Trump talking about his plans for extreme vetting for refugees and immigrants who want to enter the U.S. Here now, the author of Defeating Jihad, The Winnable War, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. So Clapper, Comey, Brennan, if you look at the names, Steinbeck, McCall, General Allen, all said ISIS will infiltrate. Trump is listening, and he's saying, okay, if they're going to infiltrate, we better vet them to keep Americans safe. Why is Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama willing to gamble with the lives of Americans? Because that's what they're doing. Why would they be willing to do that?
It's part of their ideology, Sean. Remember, these are people that are shaped by the one world multiculturalism. These are postmodern secularists, and they think, you know, it's unfair to close our borders. We had the former Secretary of Homeland Security state recently that our borders should be porous. There should be no such thing as airtight borders. It's not about national security, Sean. It's about ideology. It's about one world multiculturalism.
Well, what is the ideology except that if you don't listen to these top intelligence officials saying, yeah, ISIS will infiltrate, then if they come in and they kill Americans, then don't you bear part of the responsibility for those Americans that are victims of whatever terror attack they bring with them?
As we've discussed before, Sean, reality is optional on the left. It's not about truth, it's about their narrative. Look at this weekend. We've had 11 devices deployed. Only a handful of them exploded, but 11 devices were deployed, IEDs. How many people have to walk around America with shrapnel in their bodies? How many people have to be killed or maimed until they say, yes, there is a threat? ISIS said they're going to use refugee streams, and you know what? They've done it in Europe.
So let me ask you this. We know there are 88 Sharia courts in Great Britain. We know the no-go zones are real. I don't care how many times liberal press says they're not existent when they are. We know what happened. Look at what happened with Angela Merkel. I mean, her party was destroyed in the elections. Add to that Belgium, add to that Sweden, add to that all of Europe, and the impact that this is having, you know, the Islamization of Europe. So I guess with 50 days to go, we're going to elect a president that either acknowledges radical Islam, that will vet these refugees to keep Americans safe, build a wall and protect our borders, or we won't. So the American people have a very clear choice, don't they, in 50 days?
Sean, this has become a national security election. I believe in my heart the majority of Americans, when they walk into that polling booth, will be making this decision. Which person is going to protect me and my family? Is it Donald Trump, who's declared war on the Islamists, or is it Hillary Clinton, who until the Nice attack wouldn't even use the word jihad to describe our enemies?
Which one is going to protect us? She's still using, you know, playing word games and threading a needle, and is afraid and doesn't want to hurt people's feelings. But all right, Dr. Gorka, always good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
And up next tonight, right here on this busy news night on Hannity.
A lot of the rhetoric we've heard from Donald Trump has been seized on by terrorists.
Hillary Clinton talks tougher about my supporters than she does about Islamic terrorists.
Says a lot about Hillary, doesn't it? Anyway, Hillary accusing Trump of aiding ISIS? Really? He's firing back on the campaign trail. Sheriff David Clark, Dinesh D'Souza, they're next.
We know that a lot of the rhetoric we've heard from Donald Trump has been seized on by terrorists, in particular ISIS, because they are looking to make this into a war against Islam. Secondly, we know that Donald Trump's comments have been used online for recruitment of terrorists. The kinds of rhetoric and language that Mr. Trump has used is giving aid and comfort to our adversaries.
Well, wait a minute, Hillary. Maybe you being a part of negotiations with the #1 state sponsor of terror, that being Iran, and giving them $150 billion, the right to spin their centrifuges, the right to partner with Vladimir Putin and build missile defense, build up their conventional forces. Oh, and the brilliance of 25 days notice before inspections, not any place, any time. Pretty despicable. And then I could add to that Libya and the disaster there. Then we can add to that your support of a man that was a former head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt who once referred to Jews as descendants of apes and pigs. And we might want to talk about some other places in the world like Syria when you draw a red line in the sand and you don't follow up about it. Anyway, here's what Trump said about his Democratic rival earlier today at a rally in Florida.
The President of the United States or my opponent, and both, won't even say the words radical Islamic terror. In fact, Hillary Clinton talks tougher about my supporters than she does about Islamic terrorists, right?
What a profound point. Joining us now, Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, as well as the creator, best-selling author of Hillary's America, Dinesh D'Souza. Sheriff, I think Trump's right. She's more mean, harsh, combative, not towards Iran, not towards Assad and Syria, not toward a guy that refers to Jews as descendants of apes and pigs, not towards ISIS, but towards Trump. What is wrong with that priority?
Well, Sean, if ISIS has seized on anything, it's been the weakness of President Barack Obama. Look, Mrs. Bill Clinton and Barack Obama are sleepwalking through this war on terror. They have absolutely no sense of urgency. She keeps saying that we need to move slowly on this. Someone ought to give her a Red Bull because the wolf is at the door. The wolf is chewing through the door. She has a record of performance in terms of, she has a record of performance, and it's called Benghazi.
By the way,
when Ambassador Stevens asked for more security, and she moved slow on that.
She does make Jeb Bush look like the Energizer Bunny. There's no doubt. She's like, you know, low energy on steroids in a way. Dinesh, you did this whole thing. We're all a basket of deplorables in Hillary Clinton's mind. You know, Islamophobic, misogynist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. And, you know, she's so critical, but she's best friends with Iran and Mohammed Morsi and didn't do anything in Syria or Libya. It makes you think Donald Trump has a pretty good point here.
Well, the bizarre thing about what Hillary is saying is essentially she's saying that to call out the radical Muslims and to fight them is to play into their hands. That basically if you attack them verbally and if you declare a plan to defeat them, this is going to help them with their recruitment videos. Essentially, Donald Trump has never said that most or all Muslims are terrorists, but what he is implying is a politically incorrect truth, which is that most terrorists are Muslims. This is true in America. It's true around the world.
You're raising a good point. And yeah, you know what? The 9/11 Commission report said after the Khobar Towers, the embassy bombings in Kenya and Tanzania, after the first Trade Center bombing in the USS Cole, they concluded, Sheriff Clark, they, radical Islamists, were at war with us. We weren't at war with them. Now, let's jump ahead. The next 9/11 happens because we now are at a pre-9/11 mentality because of Obama and Hillary. Are we going to refer to New York and New Jersey? Are we going to refer to San Bernardino and Chattanooga and Fort Hood and Orlando? And are we going to say, oh, they were at war with us and Hillary Clinton was worried about offending them?
Well, Clinton and Obama plainly do not get it when it comes to the threat that we face here with radical Islamic terrorism. Donald Trump is right. He will have a strategy after listening to his military commanders, his national security people, and his homeland security people, and he will present a clear and coherent strategy to go after these individuals.
Listen,
but
until
then,
here.
we're going to have to get used to these attacks, unfortunately.
It sounds like she's willing to kiss their ass and appease them. Doesn't that what it sounds like? Oh, please, I don't want to offend the terrorists. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well,
Sean,
Clinton's strategy is to call the American people Islamophobes. That's her terror strategy, and to lecture us on how we need to be nicer to terrorists
So if we kiss their ass and suck up, they'll be nicer to us? If we give them $150 billion, the Iranians will like us? Dinesh?
It's been a disastrous strategy.
Sean, just listen to the absurdity of what Obama and Hillary are saying. Take this fellow Rahami in New York. He's pretty typical of Islamic terrorists in the sense that he's been a Muslim all his life. He sees what he is doing as an expression of his own piety. Obama and Hillary, who are not Muslims, are presuming to tell Muslims, pious Muslims, who are acting in the name of Islam, that they are not truly Muslims. And they're expecting anyone with a straight face to believe this absurdity.
All right, let's kiss the ass of every radical Islamist, and let's not say a thing. Let's not offend them. And maybe if we give them $150 billion or give Mohammed Morsi F-16s and tanks and $1.5 billion in cash, maybe they'll be, if we're nicer to the Islamists, they'll be nicer to us. That is beyond naive. Guys, thank you. Coming up, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton clash on the campaign trail. Taking in, as they're talking about refugees, Sarah Carter and Doug Schoen, they'll join us next as we continue straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. Election Day is only 50 days away, and tonight all Americans are talking about this weekend's terror attacks. Here with reaction from Circa News, Sarah Carter, and Fox News contributor Doug Schoen. All right, Doug, let me start with you.
Sure.
It's pretty disgusting, you know, with all of these people attacked and all these terrorist attacks. Hillary says Donald Trump saying radical Islam is aiding and abetting, especially coming from a woman that sucked up to the Iranians, gave them $150 billion, did nothing when the Syrians used weapons of mass destruction on their own people, and even worse, supported Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Sean, on a day like today, what Secretary Clinton should have done is we all stand together, including me and Secretary Clinton, against terror and against Islamic
but she can't
radicalism.
Say radical Islam.
To say what she said is a
it.
political and profound mistake. The fact that she said what you quoted is wrong on the merits, it's wrong substantively, and I think she needs to change her approach if she's going to benefit in the debates. I was disappointed as a Clinton supporter who was hoping for more.
Sarah? That's a pretty strong reaction from a Democrat.
An American.
An American Democrat.
He's an American Democrat. Yes, but he's right. It's a fallacy on its face. I mean, ISIS does not need Trump to garner support. I mean, that's just a complete fallacy on its face. And when you look at what Hillary Clinton is trying to establish, I mean, it makes no sense, Sean. All you have to do is talk to law enforcement officials, talk to adjudicators, talk to federal law enforcement officials that have to deal with this every day, vetting people coming into the United States. I mean, we have no capabilities. We don't have the resources.
All right,
we don't have the appropriate tools to do this.
We're short on time. Three big issues in this campaign. A president that can say radical Islam, one that won't. You got somebody who wants extreme vetting, somebody that doesn't. You got somebody that wants to build a wall and somebody that says no walls, let's build bridges. Who do you agree with more on those three specific issues, Trump or Clinton?
I actually disagree with both because there's a fourth issue that's more important to me. Killing them, going where they are, and wiping them out.
The living out of them, according to him.
But I got to hear a real plan from him and Hillary.
Sarah,
haven't heard
quick, last word.
But I think we have that plan already in place. I mean, we've been drone strikes striking the leaders. We've been going after al-Qaeda. We've been going after ISIS, and we've been going after the Taliban. It needs to be a combined enforcement, both ideological as well as drone strikes. Doug, that's just what I think.
I agree. I think you're right.
Thank you both. More Hannity right after this break. We need your help. All right, welcome back to Hannity. Before we go, quick programming note. Be sure to tune in Wednesday night, 10 p.m. I'll be in Cleveland, Ohio with Donald Trump for the hour. We'll be doing a town hall focusing on issues that matter most and impact minority voters. That's this Wednesday, 10 p.m. That's all the time we have left this evening. As always, we appreciate you being here. And Hillary, you owe Trump an apology. Aiding and abetting, really? I think you want to take that back. 49 days to go tomorrow night till Election Day. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you back here then.